Bhangarh Fort is infamous for its ghost stories and haunted reputation, drawing thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts from all over. Here are some of the most notable ghost stories and reported experiences associated with Bhangarh Fort. The legend of Bhangarh Fort is deeply intertwined with the story of a powerful black magician named Singhia and the beautiful Princess Ratnavati, whose tale has echoed through the ages, shaping the haunted reputation of this ancient site. Singhia was renowned for his mastery of the dark arts, feared and revered in equal measure. His powers were unmatched, and he lived on the outskirts of Bhangarh, where he spent his days practicing sorcery and honing his craft. Despite his formidable abilities, Singhia was consumed by a longing for love. His heart was set on Princess Ratnavati, the only daughter of the fort's ruler. Her beauty was legendary, captivating all who laid eyes on her, but her heart was untouched by the advances of many suitors, including Singhia. As the black magician watched Ratnavati from afar, he became increasingly obsessed with her. He devised a plan to win her affection, believing that his magic could bend her will to his desires. One day, he overheard the princess and her handmaidens discussing a fragrant oil that Ratnavati used to anoint herself. Singhia concocted a potent spell, infusing it into a bottle of the very same oil. He believed that if Ratnavati applied it, she would fall hopelessly in love with him. Determined to execute his plan, Singhia approached the princess under the guise of a humble merchant. He presented her with the enchanted oil, claiming it would enhance her beauty. Unbeknownst to him, Ratnavati was wise and perceptive. She sensed something was amiss and recognized the magic behind the potion. Instead of succumbing to the spell, she turned the tables on Singhia. Using her own knowledge of herbs and potions, Ratnavati created an antidote that reversed the effects of Singhia's enchantment. When she applied the oil, the spell backfired, causing Singhia to fall madly in love with her instead. Realizing that his own magic had betrayed him, he was filled with rage and humiliation. In his fury, Singhia uttered a dark curse. "You may have escaped my grasp today, but no one within these fort walls will ever find peace. Bhangarh will be a place of despair, haunted by my wrath." With those final words, he vanished into thin air, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread and sorrow. The curse quickly took hold. As time passed, mysterious events began to unfold within the fort. It is said that the once vibrant halls of Bhangarh grew silent, and the laughter of its inhabitants faded into whispers. Those who lived in the fort reported seeing shadowy figures wandering the corridors at night, and many felt an overwhelming sense of unease. Some even claimed to have encountered the spirit of Singhia himself, still seeking revenge against the princess who spurned him. The stories of those who lived in Bhangarh Fort turned tragic. People began to mysteriously disappear, and tales of madness and despair spread like wildfire. It became a place shunned by travelers and locals alike, with the very mention of the fort evoking fear and trepidation. The land that once thrived with activity and laughter became a silent witness to despair, as families fled from the ominous presence that now loomed over their lives. Over the years, many brave souls ventured into Bhangarh, curious to uncover its secrets. Some returned, shaken by their experiences, claiming to have felt an unseen presence watching them, while others reported hearing the haunting cries of a woman, presumed to be Princess Ratnavati, lamenting her lost love and the curse that sealed her fate. Even the villagers surrounding the fort felt the curse's weight. They spoke of strange occurrences, cattle that refused to graze near the fort, crops that failed, and inexplicable illnesses that plagued families. Superstitions flourished as fear gripped the hearts of those who lived nearby. Parents warned their children to stay away from the fort, sharing chilling tales of travelers who had wandered too close and were never seen again. The atmosphere thickened with anxiety, and the fort became a dark shadow looming over the region. To this day, the curse of Singhia remains a significant part of Bhangarh Fort's lore. The Archaeological Survey of India has placed a board at the entrance warning visitors not to enter the fort after sunset, citing safety concerns and the stories of those who vanished without a trace. Locals continue to share tales of the black magician and the cursed princess, preserving the memory of their tragic story. The tale of Princess Ratnavati, a young woman of extraordinary beauty and grace, has become one of the most captivating legends surrounding Bhangarh Fort. She was the only daughter of the ruler of Bhangarh, and her beauty was said to be so radiant that it could light up the darkest of nights. Tales of her allure spread far and wide, drawing many suitors, but her heart belonged to no one, as she was determined to choose her own path in life. Among those who sought her hand was a black magician named Singya, who lived in the nearby hills. He was powerful and feared, known for his mastery of dark arts. Despite his formidable skills, he was also consumed by a tragic obsession, his unyielding desire for Ratnavati. Singya believed that his magic could bend her will and make her fall in love with him. As he watched Ratnavati from the shadows, he devised a plan to win her over. One day, while wandering the marketplace, he overheard her speaking to her handmaidens about a special oil she used to enhance her beauty. In a moment of cunning inspiration, he decided to infuse his magic into the oil, hoping that when she applied it, she would become infatuated with him. Disguised as a merchant, Singya approached Ratnavati and presented her with the enchanted oil, claiming it was a rare elixir that would amplify her beauty. Although she sensed a hidden power within the potion, Ratnavati was intrigued and accepted it, believing it could be a useful gift. However, she was wise and had a keen intuition. She suspected the oil was more than it seemed. That night, as Ratnavati pondered the oil, she sought the counsel of her trusted handmaidens. Together, they concocted an antidote using herbs and potions known for their protective properties. The next morning, Ratnavati applied the oil but used the antidote first, cleverly turning Singya's plan against him. Instead of falling in love with the magician, she felt empowered and emboldened. Unbeknownst to Singya, his dark magic had backfired. As Ratnavati used the enchanted oil, she noticed a strange energy swirling around her. The black magician's spell had reversed, and instead of ensnaring her heart, it caused him to fall deeply in love with her. This sudden twist of fate filled him with rage and despair. He realized that he was powerless against the very magic he had wielded with such arrogance. Driven by anger and a desperate need for revenge, Singya stormed into the palace, demanding Ratnavati acknowledge him. He declared, "You will regret spurning me. No one shall find peace within these walls. My curse will haunt you and your lineage for eternity." His voice echoed throughout the halls, sending shivers down the spines of everyone who heard him. Despite her fear, Ratnavati stood her ground. She refused to let Singya intimidate her. In a moment of defiance, she declared that the strength of her spirit would protect her and her family from any dark magic. However, the ominous words of the black magician hung heavy in the air, and the villagers began to whisper about the curse that had been cast upon the fort. As the days turned into weeks, strange occurrences began to plague Bhangarh. It started with unsettling sounds echoing through the halls at night, whispers and cries that seemed to come from nowhere. Locals claimed to see shadows darting among the ruins, and some even reported encounters with ghostly apparitions that appeared and vanished before their eyes. These eerie events filled the fort with a sense of dread and foreboding. The vibrant life that once thrived within Bhangarh began to fade. The joyous laughter of the court was replaced with hushed conversations about the unsettling happenings. As fear gripped the hearts of the inhabitants, a sense of despair settled over the fort. Stories of misfortune began to spread, crops withering, livestock falling ill, and families experiencing unexplained tragedies. In desperation, the royal family sought guidance from wise sages and spiritual leaders. Many believed that the curse of Singya could be lifted only through rituals and prayers, yet their efforts were met with limited success. The atmosphere thickened with anxiety as even the bravest warriors and loyal subjects became wary of the fort's dark reputation. Years passed, and the once bustling Bhangarh fort fell into ruin. The people abandoned their homes, fleeing from the oppressive energy that enveloped the place. Singya's curse seemed to be inescapable, and the legacy of Princess Ratnavati became intertwined with the tragic fate of the fort. Legends began to spread, recounting tales of the lost souls trapped within its walls, haunted by the magician's wrath. Despite its decline, Bhangarh remained a site of fascination. Over time, the fort attracted curious visitors and adventurous souls eager to witness its haunted beauty. However, as twilight descended, a palpable unease filled the air. Stories of strange encounters and ghostly whispers continued to circulate among those who dared to explore its desolate halls. On nights when the moon hung low in the sky, visitors claimed to hear the echoing cries of a woman, a sound believed to be the lament of Princess Ratnavati, forever trapped in a web of love and revenge. They felt an overwhelming sadness enveloping them, as if the very walls of the fort held the weight of her unfulfilled destiny. To this day, the curse of Singya and the legend of Princess Ratnavati live on, entwined in the fabric of Bhangarh's history. The fort stands as a poignant reminder of love, unrequited, and the dire consequences of obsession. It has become a symbol of the eternal struggle between light and darkness, where love can transform into a haunting legacy. The legends surrounding Bhangarh Fort have fascinated many, but perhaps none are as unsettling as the tale of a grieving father, whose desperate search for his lost daughter has become a haunting part of the fort's folklore. This story unfolds in the shadowy depths of Bhangarh's history, where echoes of love and tragedy intertwine, creating a poignant narrative that lingers in the hearts of those who hear it. Many years ago, the fort was a bustling center of life, filled with laughter and joy. Among its residents was a beloved girl named Suman, known for her kind heart and infectious spirit. She was the pride of her family and the light of the community, often seen dancing in the courtyards and playing with the children of Bhangarh. However, her laughter masked a darker omen, one that would soon plunge her family into despair. Suman's beauty caught the attention of a mysterious traveler who passed through the region. Drawn by her charm, he became enamored with her, showering her with gifts and promises. Initially flattered, Suman was charmed by the attention. However, the traveler was not just a wandering soul, he was a sorcerer, and his intentions were far from pure. As his obsession grew, he became increasingly possessive, declaring that he would stop at nothing to make Suman his own. Fearing for her safety, Suman's father, a respected warrior of the fort, warned her against the stranger. He understood the dangers of unchecked desire and the darkness that often lurked behind alluring facades. Despite her father's pleas, Suman was torn between the thrill of romance and the love for her family. One fateful evening, against her father's wishes, she met the traveler at a secluded spot near the edge of the fort. That night, the skies darkened and a tempest raged. Lightning crackled across the horizon, illuminating the eerie landscape. As Suman ventured out, her father sensed something was amiss. Unable to shake his unease, he hurried to find her, calling her name into the raging storm. The wind howled and the rain lashed down, but his determination to protect his daughter pushed him forward. When he arrived at the designated meeting place, he found only a haunting silence. His heart raced as he searched for Suman, calling out her name until his voice grew hoarse. Hours passed and the tempest finally subsided, but there was no sign of her. Panic clawed at his heart. He knew something terrible had happened. In his desperation, he sought the help of wise sages and mystics, hoping they could reveal the fate of his beloved daughter. After performing rituals and divinations, they unearthed a chilling truth. The traveler was indeed a sorcerer, and he had taken Suman into a realm beyond the physical world, a place where time and reality blurred, and the living could become entrapped in the shadows forever. Devastated, Suman's father refused to accept defeat. He resolved to rescue her, even if it meant risking his own life. Armed with determination and a heart full of love, he embarked on a quest to confront the sorcerer and reclaim his daughter. He journeyed deep into the heart of the surrounding wilderness, seeking out ancient temples and shrines dedicated to deities who could assist him in his plight. During his travels, he encountered various spirits and supernatural beings, each offering him guidance and warnings. They spoke of the dangers that lay ahead and the power of the sorcerer, urging him to turn back. Yet, fueled by a father's love and unwavering resolve, he pressed on, delving deeper into the mysteries of the night. After what felt like an eternity, he reached the sorcerer's lair, a dark, twisted fortress hidden among the trees, pulsating with malevolent energy. The air was thick with an oppressive aura, and the walls seemed to whisper secrets of despair. Summoning every ounce of courage, he stormed into the fortress, determined to confront the sorcerer. Inside, he found himself in a labyrinthine maze of shadows and illusions. The sorcerer, cloaked in darkness, stood before him, eyes glinting with malice. He laughed, a sound that echoed ominously through the chamber, mocking the father's attempts to rescue his daughter. "She is mine now, trapped in this realm for all eternity," he declared. "You cannot save her." But the father refused to relent. He called upon the power of love and the memories of Suman's laughter, invoking the strength of their bond. In that moment, a fierce light radiated from within him, challenging the darkness that surrounded the sorcerer. The confrontation escalated into a battle of wills, a clash of love against obsession. In a final, desperate attempt, the father unleashed the energy of his love, piercing through the sorcerer's illusions. A blinding light engulfed the chamber, dispelling the shadows that had bound Suman. The walls trembled, and the sorcerer shrieked in fury as the power of a father's love shattered his hold on the realm. As the darkness receded, Suman emerged, dazed but alive. Reunited, the father and daughter embraced, tears mingling with the remnants of the storm. However, the sorcerer's curse lingered. In his fury, he vowed that Bhangarh would forever carry the weight of his wrath, and that the spirits of those who lost their lives would roam the fort's ruins. Returning to Bhangarh, Suman and her father found the fort in a state of disarray, haunted by the echoes of the past. Although they were reunited, the atmosphere was thick with sorrow and unrest. Tales of the sorcerer's curse began to spread throughout the community, warning others of the dangers that lingered within the fort's walls. In the years that followed, the people of Bhangarh recounted the tale of the father who fought against darkness to reclaim his daughter. His love and determination became legendary, inspiring countless others to believe in the power of love and resilience. However, the sorcerer's curse took root, casting a long shadow over the fort. Strange occurrences began to plague the residents. Whispers of lost souls wandering the halls, flickering lights in the dead of night, and a pervasive sense of unease that settled over the community. Despite their efforts to rebuild and heal, the memory of the sorcerer's curse loomed large. It became a part of Bhangarh's identity, a reminder of the fragility of life and the consequences of unchecked desire. Visitors to the fort often spoke of feeling a lingering sadness, an echo of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. The legend of Bhangarh Fort is often intertwined with tales of eerie encounters and unexplained phenomena, but one of the most harrowing stories is that of a group of friends who decided to venture into the fort one fateful night. Their excitement was palpable. They had heard about the fort's haunting reputation and were determined to experience it for themselves, despite warnings from locals to steer clear after dark. The group consisted of 5 friends: Amit, Ria, Karan, Mira, and Ravi, each with a penchant for thrill-seeking and a healthy dose of skepticism. They packed their backpacks with snacks, flashlights, and a few cameras, eager to document their adventure. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they arrived at the fort, its silhouette looming ominously against the fading light. With a mix of anticipation and trepidation, they entered through the main gate, which creaked ominously as if protesting their intrusion. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, and a sense of foreboding settled around them. They chuckled nervously, trying to shake off the creeping unease, but deep down they felt the weight of the fort's haunting history. As they explored the crumbling walls and ancient temples, they shared stories of the ghosts that were said to roam the grounds, stories of lost souls, eerie apparitions, and the lingering curse of the sorcerer. The friends found themselves entranced, their laughter echoing through the deserted corridors, but as the night deepened, their bravado began to wane. Suddenly, Ravi suggested they play a game of truth or dare, hoping to lighten the mood. As the game progressed, the dares became increasingly audacious, culminating in a challenge for Mira to venture alone to the dancer's Haveli, a location rumored to be particularly haunted. With her heart racing, Mira accepted the challenge and set off toward the dimly lit structure, her friends watching nervously from a distance. As she entered the Haveli, a chill swept through the air. The interior was cloaked in shadows, the faint light from her flashlight casting eerie shapes on the walls. Mira called out to her friends, her voice echoing back at her, but received only silence in return. Unnerved, she began to explore, drawn deeper into the heart of the Haveli. Moments later, the atmosphere shifted. Mira felt an icy breeze whip through the room, sending shivers down her spine. The laughter of her friends faded into the background, replaced by an oppressive silence that seemed to seep into her very bones. She moved cautiously, each step echoing as if she were not alone. Then, just as she turned a corner, she spotted something out of the corner of her eye, a fleeting shadow darting across the room. Her heart raced, and she instinctively called out for her friends, but the words caught in her throat. She felt an inexplicable pull to follow the shadow, as if something beyond the veil of reality was beckoning her closer. Meanwhile, outside the Haveli, Amit, Ria, Karan, and Ravi grew increasingly worried. Minutes had passed, and Mira had yet to return. They called out her name, their voices tinged with anxiety, but there was no response. The laughter that had filled the air earlier was replaced with an unsettling tension, and a deep sense of dread began to settle in. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they decided to search for her. They entered the dancers' Haveli, calling her name, but the silence that enveloped them was suffocating. The air felt heavy, as if the very walls were closing in around them. They moved cautiously, their flashlights flickering as they illuminated the dark corners of the room. As they reached the far end of the Haveli, Ravi spotted a figure standing in the shadows. His heart dropped as he called out, "Mira!" But the figure did not respond. Instead, it seemed to shift and fade, melting into the darkness. Panic surged through the group as they exchanged terrified glances, realizing they were not alone. They frantically searched the rest of the fort, but Mira was nowhere to be found. The more they called out for her, the more the atmosphere thickened with dread. It was as if the fort itself was absorbing their fear, transforming the once thrilling adventure into a nightmare. Feeling desperate, Amit suggested they split up to cover more ground. Reluctantly, they agreed, knowing that staying together was no longer an option if they wanted to find their friend. They each took a different path, their flashlights dancing through the shadows as they called out for Mira. As Ravi ventured into one of the temples, he felt a cold breeze pass through him. The temperature dropped sharply, and he could hear faint whispers that seemed to be coming from the walls. Panic-stricken, he stumbled backward, colliding with Karan, who had just entered the room behind him. "What was that?" Karan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know." "We need to find Mira and get out of here," Ravi replied, his heart pounding in his chest. Meanwhile, Ria and Amit had moved toward the main courtyard. Suddenly, they heard a distant cry, one that sent chills racing down their spines. It was Mira's voice, laced with fear and desperation. They exchanged horrified looks and rushed toward the sound, calling her name. They followed the echoes of her voice, weaving through the labyrinth of crumbling walls. The fort seemed alive, with every creak and groan heightening their anxiety. Finally, they reached a small chamber where the cries seemed to be coming from, only to find it empty. As they stood there, breathless and terrified, they felt a sudden shift in the air. The temperature dropped, and an overwhelming sense of dread enveloped them. Then, out of nowhere, a flicker of movement caught their attention. They turned to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its features obscured by darkness. Before they could react, the figure lunged at them, but as quickly as it appeared, it vanished into thin air. The friends screamed and stumbled back, their minds racing with terror. They knew they had to leave the fort immediately, but they couldn't abandon Mira. Just then, they heard a faint whisper, "Help me." It was Mira's voice, more distant now, but unmistakable. Without thinking, they sprinted in the direction of the sound, their hearts racing as they called out for her. After what felt like an eternity, they burst into a large hall. In the center stood Mira, pale and trembling, staring blankly at a wall. Relief washed over them, but it was quickly overshadowed by a chilling realization. She seemed entranced, as if something unseen held her captive. "Mira!" Ria cried, rushing to her side. But as she approached, Mira turned to face them, her eyes wide with fear, yet vacant. It was as if she was caught between two worlds, lost in the depths of the fort's haunting legacy. "Mira, come back to us," Amit urged, grabbing her shoulders gently but firmly. As he did, the shadows around them began to writhe and pulse, a dark energy swirling through the air. The whispers intensified, echoing in a cacophony of despair. In that moment, the friends knew they were in grave danger. The fort was not merely a place of haunted tales. It was alive with the echoes of those who had suffered and vanished within its walls. They could feel the anger of the spirits that lingered, restless and vengeful. Karan, sensing the urgency, stepped forward. "We need to leave now." "Mira, you have to fight it." "Focus on us," he shouted, desperation lacing his voice. With a jolt, Mira blinked as if waking from a deep slumber. What happened?" she stammered, confusion clouding her gaze. "Let's get out of here," Ravi urged, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the exit. The shadows surged behind them, the whispers rising to a deafening crescendo as they fled through the halls of the fort. They raced toward the main gate, their hearts pounding in their chests. The oppressive darkness seemed to reach for them, but with every step they felt the grip of the fort loosening. They burst through the entrance just as the shadows crashed against the walls, echoing their frustration and rage. Outside, the cool night air felt like a balm against their frayed nerves. They collapsed to the ground, breathless and shaken, grateful to be free of the fort's grasp. Mira, still trembling, looked at her friends with wide eyes, the weight of their experience settling in. "I don't know what happened to me," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "It felt like I was being pulled away." Amit placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. We're all safe," he reassured her. But deep down, they all knew they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than they could imagine. The experience left a lasting mark on the group. As they drove away from Bhangarh Fort, they couldn't shake the feeling that something still lingered behind them, a haunting reminder of the darkness that resides within those ancient walls. They vowed never to return, sharing their story with others as a warning about the fort's secrets and the restless spirits that dwelled within. The tale of the seven friends' visit to Bhangarh Fort unfolds with a sense of excitement and curiosity as they venture into the realm of the supernatural, unaware of the dark forces that lay in wait. The group Riya, Samir, Neha, Karan, Deepak, Priyanka, and Anjali were close friends, bonded by their love for adventure and the thrill of exploring the unknown. With a shared fascination for ghost stories and urban legends, they eagerly planned a weekend getaway to the infamous Bhangarh Fort, a place reputed to be one of the most haunted locations in India. As they journeyed from Delhi, the landscape shifted from bustling urban chaos to the serene beauty of Rajasthan. Lush green fields dotted with patches of wildflowers and distant hills greeted them, but as they approached the fort, an unsettling energy hung in the air. The imposing silhouette of Bhangarh loomed ahead, its ancient walls telling tales of glory and tragedy. Upon arrival, the friends marveled at the fort's grandeur despite its dilapidated state. The crumbling stone walls and intricate carvings worn by time whispered stories of a bygone era. The atmosphere buzzed with a strange mix of excitement and apprehension. Armed with cameras and flashlights, they set off to explore the sprawling grounds. As they wandered deeper into the fort, they began to separate into smaller groups, eager to uncover the secrets hidden within its walls. Riya and Karan headed toward the main temple, drawn by the ornate architecture and spiritual energy emanating from it. Samir and Neha decided to explore the dancer's Haveli, intrigued by the tales of ghostly figures seen dancing in the moonlight. Deepak, Priyanka, and Anjali ventured into the ancient marketplace, where ruins of shops and stalls painted a picture of life in the fort during its prime. Riya and Karan stood in the temple's central chamber, feeling an eerie stillness envelop them. The air grew thick, and they exchanged nervous glances. "Do you feel that?" Riya asked, shivering slightly. "Yeah, it's like the air is charged," Karan replied, glancing around as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Meanwhile, in the dancer's Haveli, Samir and Neha were captivated by the stories of dancers who once performed there, their laughter echoing through the walls. As they explored, Neha's flashlight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. Suddenly, they heard a faint sound, like the soft strains of music drifting through the air. "Do you hear that?" Samir whispered, his heart racing. Neha nodded, her eyes wide. "It sounds like music, but it's coming from nowhere." Curiosity piqued. They followed the sound deeper into the Haveli, only to find themselves in a large empty room. The music abruptly stopped, and an unsettling silence filled the space. "This is creepy," Samir said, trying to laugh it off. "Let's get back to the others." As they retraced their steps, Deepak, Priyanka, and Anjali explored the marketplace, admiring the intricate carvings on the stone walls. Suddenly, Priyanka stumbled upon a worn-out tapestry depicting a beautiful princess and a dark sorcerer. "Look at this," she exclaimed, pointing to the image. "I've heard stories about the princess who lived here. Ratnavati, wasn't it?" "Yes," Anjali replied, intrigued. Her beauty was said to be unmatched, and she caught the eye of a powerful sorcerer who cursed the fort when she rejected him. Just then, a chill swept through the air, and they felt a sudden drop in temperature. Anjali shivered, glancing around nervously. "I don't like this place anymore. Let's find Ria and Karan." Back at the temple, Ria and Karan noticed that the shadows around them seemed to deepen, and an uncomfortable feeling settled in their stomachs. "We should regroup with the others," Karan suggested, looking toward the exit. As they turned to leave, a faint whisper echoed through the chamber, sending chills down their spines. "What was that?" Ria gasped, clutching Karan's arm tightly. "Let's just get out of here," Karan replied, his voice steady but laced with concern. As they made their way back toward the main courtyard, the friends began to converge, each group sharing their eerie experiences. Samir and Neha recounted the mysterious music, while Deepak, Priyanka, and Anjali shared their encounter with the tapestry. The atmosphere was thick with tension as they all agreed to leave the fort before nightfall. However, as they prepared to exit, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the fort into shadows. The temperature dropped sharply, and an eerie quiet enveloped them. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed from somewhere deep within the fort. "What was that?" Anjali shouted, her eyes wide with fear. They looked at each other, panic rising in their throats. "We need to find out who that was," Deepak insisted, adrenaline surging through him. They moved cautiously back into the fort, calling out for their friends. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if unseen forces were pressing in around them. As they neared the dancers' Haveli again, they heard whispers, soft and insistent, drawing them closer. "Is someone there?" Ria called out, her voice trembling. But the only response was the echo of their own fear. When they reached the Haveli, they found Samir and Neha huddled together, their faces pale. "What happened?" Ria asked, concern etched on her face. "We heard a woman crying," Neha said, shivering. "It felt so real. We thought it was someone in trouble." Just then, a shadow darted across the room, and they all froze, hearts racing. "We should get out of here now," Karan urged, backing away from the direction of the shadow. As they turned to leave, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The shadows elongated, and the air crackled with tension. They rushed toward the exit, but the shadows seemed to swirl around them, making it difficult to find their way. In the chaos, they suddenly found themselves separated. Ria and Karan stumbled into a small room, and the door slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. "What just happened?" Karan exclaimed, pounding on the door. Meanwhile, the others were frantically trying to locate their missing friends, calling out into the darkness. "Ria! Karan!" Priyanka shouted, fear evident in her voice. As the group regrouped near the temple, they realized that the fort was alive with unsettling energy, and the stories they had dismissed as mere legends began to feel terrifyingly real. "We have to find them!" Deepak urged, his eyes wide with determination. As they searched the dimly lit halls, they could feel the weight of countless stories pressing down on them. The whispers grew louder, almost mocking in their urgency. Shadows seemed to flicker just beyond their line of sight, and every creak of the old fort sent shivers down their spines. Finally, after what felt like hours, they managed to locate Ria and Karan, who were huddled together in the small room, visibly shaken but unharmed. "What happened?" Priyanka asked as they rushed to their side. We heard voices, and then the door slammed," Ria said, her voice trembling. "It felt like something was trying to keep us inside." The group exchanged anxious glances, realizing that the fort had indeed come alive around them, and they were not just visitors but unwitting participants in a haunting tale that had played out for centuries. With fear tightening their chests, they decided to leave the fort before it became fully engulfed in darkness. The oppressive atmosphere followed them as they retraced their steps toward the exit. But just as they reached the main gate, a gust of wind swept through, chilling them to the bone. "Run!" Karan shouted, propelling them forward as they sprinted toward the car. their hearts pounding in unison. The fort seemed to roar in protest as they fled, the shadows stretching and contorting around them. Once they reached the car, they quickly piled inside, breathless and shaken. As they sped away, the fort receded into the darkness behind them, its ancient walls whispering secrets that would haunt them long after they left. The friends drove in silence, the adrenaline of their experience slowly fading, but the weight of what had transpired still heavy in the air. They all shared a knowing glance, realizing that their adventure had transformed into something far more profound than mere curiosity. Bhangarh Fort had left its mark on them, a chilling reminder that some places hold memories steeped in sorrow and the supernatural. The tale of Bhangarh Fort is not complete without the chilling account of the mysterious disappearances that have plagued its grounds. Among the many stories, one stands out, a tragic narrative that intertwines the destinies of a group of tourists and the restless spirits that seem to inhabit the fort. It was during a long weekend when a group of 6 friends, all avid explorers and fans of the paranormal, decided to embark on a journey to Bhangarh Fort. They had heard about the fort's eerie reputation and were eager to experience the thrill for themselves. The friends, Anisha, Vikram, Priya, Raj, Simran, and Arjun, set off on their adventure, excitement bubbling within them as they drove through the winding roads of Rajasthan. Upon their arrival, they were immediately struck by the fort's ancient beauty. The crumbling walls, the intricate carvings, and the sprawling courtyards seemed to whisper stories of the past. They snapped photos and shared laughs, but as the sun began to dip below the horizon, a sense of foreboding settled in. The fort's eerie silence wrapped around them like a shroud, and the stories of ghostly encounters played on loop in their minds. Ignoring the warnings from locals about the dangers of being inside the fort after sunset, they decided to stay and explore the grounds further. The thrill of adventure outweighed their fear, and as darkness fell, they lit their flashlights, illuminating the path ahead. They decided to split into pairs to cover more ground, with Raj and Simran heading toward the ancient temples, while Anisha and Vikram chose to explore the Dancer's Haveli. Priya and Arjun, meanwhile, wandered off toward the outskirts of the fort, feeling a magnetic pull toward a secluded area said to be the site of numerous disappearances. As they approached, a strange sensation washed over them, a sense of being watched, as if unseen eyes were tracking their every move. "Did you feel that?" Priya whispered, glancing around nervously. "Yeah," Arjun replied, trying to dismiss the unease that was creeping in. "It's just the stories getting to us. We'll be fine." But as they moved deeper into the shadows, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, thick with an unexplainable tension. Priya felt her heart race as an inexplicable fear settled in her chest. Meanwhile, Raj and Simran, exploring the temples, stumbled upon a hidden chamber adorned with ancient relics. The atmosphere inside felt charged, and as they examined the artifacts, they noticed strange markings on the walls, symbols that appeared to pulse with energy. Suddenly, the air crackled with electricity, and Raj's flashlight flickered violently. "Did you see that?" he exclaimed, pointing at a shadow that darted across the room. Simran nodded, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here. This doesn't feel right." Back in the Dancer's Haveli, Anisha and Vikram felt the air grow cold as they explored the dilapidated structure. They could hear faint whispers echoing through the halls, the sound mingling with the rustle of the wind. Anisha shivered, goosebumps prickling her skin. "Maybe we should head back," she suggested, glancing toward the door, where darkness loomed like a thick curtain. Vikram, feeling adventurous, shook his head. "Just a few more minutes. Let's see what else we can find." But as they continued deeper into the Haveli, a sudden crash echoed through the room, causing Anisha to scream. A large stone fell from the ceiling, narrowly missing them. They exchanged terrified glances and decided it was time to regroup with the others. As they hurried back toward the main courtyard, they noticed an unsettling silence had fallen over the fort. Where laughter and chatter had once filled the air, there was now only an oppressive stillness. "Where is everyone?" Anisha asked, a knot of fear tightening in her stomach. "This isn't right." They reached the central courtyard, but the others were nowhere to be found. Panic set in as they called out their names, the sound echoing back in the heavy silence. "Maybe they went back to the car," Vikram suggested, but doubt lingered in his voice. Determined to find their friends, Anisha and Vikram set off toward the exit, but as they moved through the dark corridors, the sense of being followed intensified. Shadows flickered just out of their line of sight, and the whispers returned, now louder and more insistent. At the same time, Priya and Arjun had returned to the main courtyard, only to find it abandoned. Their friends were gone, and the air felt charged with an ominous energy. They exchanged worried glances, feeling an unshakable sense of dread. Where could they be? Priya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to check the temples again," Arjun replied, fear creeping into his voice. They might have gone back there. As they turned to head toward the temples, the ground beneath them seemed to tremble, and the walls echoed with a deep, rumbling sound. It was as if the fort itself was alive, pulsating with a malevolent force. Meanwhile, Raj and Simran, lost in the hidden chamber, suddenly found themselves surrounded by a thick fog that rolled in from nowhere. The air was suffocating, and as they tried to navigate their way back, they felt as if they were being pulled deeper into the darkness. Panic surged within them, and they called out for their friends, but their voices were swallowed by the fog. In that moment, time lost meaning. Minutes felt like hours as the friends wandered through the fort, desperately searching for one another. The walls twisted and turned, disorienting them, and the shadows grew darker, wrapping around them like tendrils. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Anisha and Vikram stumbled upon a small group of locals who had come to check on the fort. The locals, sensing the friends' distress, guided them back to the main courtyard, where they gathered their belongings, frantic and trembling. "We have to find our friends!" Anisha cried, desperation lacing her words. The locals exchanged worried glances. "You shouldn't be here after dark. Many have disappeared in this fort," one of them warned, his voice grave. "We can't leave without them," Vikram insisted, but the locals urged them to leave, the danger too real to ignore. Just as they were about to give in to despair, a frantic Raj and Simran appeared from the shadows, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. "We thought we'd never find you," Raj exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. As they regrouped, they realized that the others were still missing. Priya and Arjun had not returned, and the weight of that knowledge pressed down on them. The friends huddled together, deciding to leave the fort before darkness fully engulfed them. They retraced their steps, moving swiftly through the twisting corridors, the oppressive atmosphere closing in around them. Shadows danced on the walls, and the whispers grew louder, mocking their fear. Just as they reached the entrance, Priya and Arjun appeared, breathless and shaken. "We thought we'd lost you all," Priya cried, relief washing over her face. But there was no time for celebration. The fort seemed to pulse with an angry energy, and the shadows flickered ominously. As they hurried through the gate, they felt an unseen force pushing them forward, as if the fort was trying to keep them trapped within its walls. Once outside, they gasped for fresh air, the night sky sprawling above them like a blanket of stars. But the haunting memories of Bhangarh Fort lingered in their minds. They knew they had narrowly escaped a fate that had befallen many before them. As they drove away, the friends exchanged quiet glances, a shared understanding passing between them. The fort was not just a collection of stones and stories. It was a place steeped in sorrow, where the echoes of the past still roamed the halls, searching for those who would listen. The chilling experience left an indelible mark on them, a reminder that some places hold secrets that are best left undisturbed. They promised each other never to return to Bhangarh Fort, knowing that the stories they had heard were more than mere legends. They were warnings, whispered by the restless spirits that lingered in the shadows. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share the video. See you next time.